Thanks for having me in this wonderful place and wonderful assembly. I am Lionel Leullier. I am working for SNCF Réseau since 2014. Before I was working in several main motorway concession company in France as Vinci Concession. Now concessionaire of the decade D4 motorway in Czech Republic. Just the project of SNCF Réseau in France. SNCF Réseau, it's one of the main railway company in the world and operate 30,000 kilometers of railway in France and 2,070 kilometers, 700 kilometers, of high-speed railway. The railway of SNCF and all railway need finance to be continuously improved, and also new project to be financed. And here the PPP and the corridor and the concession scheme is two very useful tools to finance some new projects. As the French ambassador Alexis Duterte said this morning, SNCF Réseau have an old experience in infrastructure and 40 years in high-speed railway, as Mona said a few minutes ago. The project of SNCF Réseau
Máme 5 velkých projektů. Jedná se o systémový projekt, potom projekt nádraží v Montpellier. Je to nádraží v hodnotě mnoha milionů eur. A potom třetí projekt, a to je traťový projekt na základě partnerství PPP. Celková částka představuje téměř 15 miliard eur. Vysokorychlostní trať Süd-Europe-Atlantik je... Já se dívám do svých papírů, protože česky toho zatím moc neumím, takže je to pro mě trochu náročné dívat se do dvou jazykových verzí. Takže projekt Süd-Europe-Atlantik a je to trasa, která má 302 kilometrů. Byla otevřena v červenci roku 2017 a teď se vlastně dostanete z Paříže do Bordeaux za 2 hodiny a 5 minut na místo původních 3 hodin. Koncesní smlouva byla podepsána v rámci koncesního schématu s novou společností založenou za tímto účelem.
Crossing on the railway. The second one, Bretagne Pays de Loire. You will have a fully description of this by Patrick Levers in this afternoon. It's a 180 kilometer railway in a PPP scheme. Here, the new company, the SPV company, is remunerated by the grantor according to the rent defined in the contract. It's an availability payment, and it is our main second project. The third one opened also in December 2017. It's also a PPP model, and it's a performance as all PPP. The performance runs performance project based on the quality of the maintenance, the disponibility of the railway, and the speed of intervention when the operator facing any problem. I will speak about just this is a standard organization and in PPP project. When an SPV it's set up to build and operate a new project, and each actor of the project have a role to play to guarantee the success of the project. The first one, it's of course the contracting public authority. We need a strong, public authority in construction phase, but also in operational phase on a long-term purpose. And I know that the team of Sprava, Derycke, is fully mobilized for the subject, and we all see the wonderful works of Tomas here on this subject for the success of all of this project. The shareholder have also a major role to play in this project because and we need you need a long-term partner, not only a constructor but a long-term partner. Of course, because of the quality of the contract, the respecting of the cost and delay, it's a major point, but it's not the only point on the PPP. But of course, there is a major point. But why a long-term partner? Because in PPP, there is an integration of the design, construction, and maintenance dimension in the same contract. This type of contract guarantees the public authority and availability of the railway on a long-term period. And this for this reason that we need a long-term partner on this. Banks are of course for funding the major role of banks, but they have an essential role in respecting the completion deadline. You will see on our project, the banks have played a major role, and the contract have played a major role because they have a strong way to guarantee the respect of the cost and the delay. For us, we have the chance to build something like 560 kilometers, near 600 kilometers of high-speed railway in 6 years period, like you see in the scheme. And we thought that only the PPP and concession contract give up this opportunity to build these three main operations at the same time. And at the same time, and in totally respect of the delay of realization. I will this ups. There is also this type of contract give you, I hope tomorrow, the opportunity to optimize the project in a good find a good arbitration, between deadline and cost. Just this in this type of project, you need right arbitration and distribution of risk between all the actors, and it's a key issue for PPP and concession contract. The right way for people to deal with risk, and this it's easy to say, not so easy to put in a contract, because everything will be put in contract, but it's a main difficulty in PPP and concession. For example, in the construction phase, there is a huge issue about landscape acquisition. In France, we develop legislative tools which can be useful to be used here in Republic Czech. Also, in operational phase, we need to be focused on security, of non-performance of the axis. As I said to you, it is an availability payment, and the railway need to be always operational for rail operator, and we need to be focused on this. All the contract changes and all the process of evolution need to be defined in the contract, because in 25 or 30 years time, there is always some evolution of technology, evolution of way to operate, and this has to be defined from the beginning. And of course, difficulty for assurance. There is today change in assurance market, and we need to deal with this problem also. Just to finish, because my time is going up and going down. For future of Czech high-speed railway, we thought that it's a long-term project, and you need a long-term staffing on this project. And again, thanks to Tomas to be there, and thanks to everybody to support this scheme. We thought it's a good scheme for the future here.
Tak, Lioneli, děkujeme moc. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You may have noticed what we already heard from Mrs. Lobočková and Mr. Trojak. Czech Republic is looking into multi-fund financing. Our debate will also focus on several resources. Lionel has introduced their view. Multi-funding will mean involvement of multilateral banks such as European Investment Bank or EBRD. We've got their representative from EBRD, for example. Jan Trojak will speak on behalf of a Czech bank, the biggest financier of the D4 project. Let me now pass the floor on to Marc Derycke, a PPP expert from European Investment Bank, EPEC. He is the main advisor with a 15-year experience. EPEC is an organization a section that supports public sector when setting and achieving PPP projects. And my first question that goes to him is, how does he see PPP on railways. I think we have signed a framework contract with EIB. There's a loan to be provided to the government. But at the same time, we should mention, and Marc will talk about that the EIB funded those large, big railway projects in other countries.
Thomas, yes, so my name is Marc Derycke, working now for 2 years and a half with the EIB. Before joining the EIB, I spent 25 years working in private consulting firms, mostly for public sector clients in projects related to infrastructure financing and delivery. The EIB is the largest multilateral financial institutions, and with a focus on supporting the EU member states in their climate actions. And so, indeed, high-speed rail infrastructure and rolling stocks are clearly eligible for EIB financing. Actually, the lending to the rail industry, to the rail infrastructure and rolling stock for the past decade, average 4 billion euro per year, with a quarter of that amount on high-speed rail projects, so that is 1 billion euro per year. The EIB used various financing products to support those projects. I mean, that could be public sector loan, but it could also be project finance if the project is structured like that, especially in the case of PPP. It is also currently appraising green bond solution, and that is for a railway infrastructure manager, whereby the EIB will actually purchase those senior green bonds issued by the rail infrastructure manager, the proceeds of which then will be used to finance new infrastructure and electric rolling stock. So this is under appraisal, but it is indeed one solution. The EIB has been involved in the financing of some of the high-speed infrastructure projects in France, and some of the projects mentioned by Lionel Leullier. I mean, for example, the LGV Sud-Europe Atlantique, SEA, so which has been structured as a concession, so with the traffic risk transfer to the concessionaire. There, the EIB has been involved and provided part of the debt. I think it's interesting, and that was already mentioned during the previous panel, what is those financing structure of those PPP. If you take that one, this LGV, actually most of the funds which is used to cover the capital expenditure provided by public funding. I mean, 51% of those funds are actually grants from various public authorities. And then you have 10% of equity and 39% of the debt to cover the total of the 7.7 billion euro investment cost. And actually, of the debt, that debt, sorry, and the equity, it is actually 18% of the total financing, which is really exposed to project risk. So we see there an example of the difficulties of not only financing mega projects, but also recognizing the fact that those projects and the benefits which are generated by those projects cannot necessarily be captured by the project operators, project stakeholders. I mean, the same for the high-speed rail Bretagne Pays de la Loire. It has been procured as a contrat de partenariat, so that's, I would say, the French version of DBFM, which transfer the availability risk to the partner, the private partner. But again, the capital expenditure amount to 3.2 billion, and 60% of that was actually public sector funding grants. Only 40%, 7% of equity, and 30% of debt were not grants. And for that case, also, only 13% of the financing was actually exposed to project risk. So this, those are illustration of the challenge to finance those mega transport projects. And actually, to make a link with one of the previous presentation, those projects are not transport projects, they are not mobility projects, they are overall territorial development projects, which mean that among the benefit that they will deliver, the wide economic benefit, I mean, not only the reduction of emission, but in terms of development goes really beyond what will be the direct user of the infrastructure. And so the challenge is actually to capture some of those benefits and to channel the fund to the project by some way or the other. So let me just introduce, I mean, the difference between funding and financing, which is crucial in this case. Funding are all the money, the ultimate source of money that could come from the users, or tax money, or grants provided by institutions, international institutions. So those, of course, there might be a mismatch in terms of timing between those funds and cash flow available to the project and the need of the project in terms of capital and operating expenditure. At that stage comes the financing part. Financing are those financial instruments which are used to have a matching in terms of time between the need of the project and the available funds. And before jumping to financing, and of course EIB is a financing institution, funding is one of the key issues, especially for those large projects which would generate, again, benefits which goes beyond the one that can be captured by charging the direct users. For infrastructure, the charging are the track charges used by the train operating company. And those are highly regulated. And actually, I mean, economic theory would tell us that in order to have an efficient use of the infrastructure, that should be set at a marginal cost, which is much lower than what would be needed to cover the full cost of the infrastructure. Beyond that, there are many ways actually to channel funding to the project by mechanisms which are called value capture mechanism. So that, I mean, other indirect benefits can actually be participate to the funding of the project. So affordability, which is, I mean, the financial sustainability of the project from the perspective of the different stakeholders in the project, is key for those projects. Even though they might pass the test of the economic, social, and environmental cost-benefit analysis. The second test would be to set up a scheme whereby the project would be financially sustainable for all parties involved. Like this program, I mean, the program could be up to 40, even more than 40 billion euros spent over 10 years. If you compare that to the gross capital formation of the general government in Czechia. In 2022, this amount to 12.8 billion. So compare the yearly capex of the high-speed rail program, 4 to 5 billion a year. That's more than a third of the current level of the public investment, all sectors covering. The government consolidated debt at the end of 2022 was 124 billion euro. So would the whole program be funded by issuing government debt? That could increase that level. Just not taking into account all the returns to the budget through all the benefits generated. But at first, 40 billion, this is again a third of the actual amount of the debt. The government deficit last year was 10 billion euros. So that's, again, if you compare that to the investment, which means that it is really crucial to think about analysis in grid debt. What are the funding mechanisms, the value capture mechanism that has to be put in place to pay for the infrastructure, to make sure that the track access charge is set at a level that will contribute to the financing, but will not be a barrier to entry of the train operating companies and provide incentive for lower use of the infrastructure. So I think that's the message. This is an ambitious scheme with a lot of benefits. Some of them are not or maybe not monetized, but also some opportunities to generate value that could be and should be valued, should be channeled to the project to make it financially sustainable for the general government, the regional authorities, and the Czech Railway Administration. And of course, EIB is not only a lending institution, it also provided advisory services, the department of which I come from, and we are, of course, ready to help and to support the Czech Railway Administration in making those preparatory studies that would make and reinforce their investment program. Thank you.
Tak my děkujeme.
Thank you. Thank you for the perspective of the European Investment Bank. This is something that we will definitely think about. I would like to ask Dagmar Rancakova now, the representative of the European Bank of EBRD in the Czech Republic. I would like to ask her for a short contribution. She learned only very recently that we would like to invite her to this event, and EBRD is partners with the Czech Rail Infrastructure Manager in preparation of feasibility studies for the railway connection between Prague Airport and Kladno. Well, before you start with your comment or contribution, I would like to focus on one question that appeared on slide. 1% of financing from the EU. Do you expect what should be the percentage of EU funding that can be expected? So, well, I'm not sure whether I need to turn on the microphone. I hope that you can hear me well. Okay.
I will speak in English because I'm representing the international financial institutions. So I hope it's okay. And it's true that I'm very last-minute replacement of my colleague, who is a true expert in the infrastructure financing. But I'm really happy to be here and to learn very many valuable insights. And thank you for the organizers to give me the opportunity to actually present some view of the EBRD on the railway sector. The EBRD, so we are an international financial institution with an ESG mandate, and we remain committed to be supporting the railway sector across the countries where we operate. It is mainly due to the fact that the railway projects bear important sustainability agenda. For example, they lead to a modal shift which takes cargo and people off the roads and move them onto the electricity-powered railways. And this environmental element is very important for us. What we can see across the markets where we operate is that the railway sector can be managed via several models. For example, PPPs or via state-owned operators. In some of the countries, we can see that the state-owned railway operators dominate, but we also try to find ways how to work with them and support them with their investment projects, because those projects bear these important sustainability agenda. For example, anything concerning electrification, such as acquisition of new electric locomotives or expansion of a single track to a double track by adding more tracks, etc. In other countries, especially in Europe, we see that the markets are more liberalized and open to a private sector. And there we, again, try very much find ways for working with the private sector entities and try to finance and support them in their investments, which are very important for the infrastructure development in that country. With regards to the PPPs, it can be a very important, they can play a very important role in developing and providing the railway transportation services, especially with a clear split of assets under the PPP and also clear division of responsibilities. For example, the network maintenance with the state and the rolling stock with the private sector. And from the point of view of EBRD, we have a very strong expertise in this field, and we can work and help the public sector very early on and help them with their preparation of potential PPPs and very complex technical documentations. And that is what we are actually doing, as was mentioned with the advisory consortium working for the authorities on the possible Prague airport high-speed rail link. Maybe just a couple of comments on green financing, because it resonates today here as well. The railway sector remains a good candidate for the green financing, and it is because of the sustainability element it has, and because it leads to gas emission and to a reduction of pollution, and due to the modal shift it brings about. We see an interest on the market for the green bonds and sustainability-linked bonds, and we have a very healthy appetite for investing into these instruments. It is important to note that EBRD puts a lot of robust attention to the fact that the green bonds and sustainability-linked bonds and these instruments are issued according to the International Capital Market Association principles, and we also always want to have a second-party opinion to review this. Because of our ESG mandate and our own commitments, all our projects we invest in need to be Paris Agreement aligned. For each project we invest in, we conduct very thorough due diligence, which also includes very comprehensive analysis of the environmental impact. We have dedicated teams, we have experts who are assessing the technical aspects, and for each project we apply relevant EBRD's environmental and social criteria. So to conclude, EBRD remains very interested in financing the railway sector, and we would be very keen to consider financing opportunities when they come to the Czech Republic. Thank you.
Tak, já bych chtěl poděkovat.
Thank you. without support of multilateral banks such as EIB or EBRD, both in terms of technical aspects and funding, that is co-funding of large projects, both these types of cooperation are absolutely critical for the Czech Republic. They both help improve the process and facilitate and increase the quality and credibility of projects, which in consequence enhances the interest of the banking sector. Now we are getting to Jan Trojak, representing a commercial bank, CSOB from the KBC Group. You may know Jan Trojak, the most knowledgeable banker in the field of infrastructure funding. He's the supreme financier of the first pilot project. He's also engaged in the funding of other European projects, such as in Germany. So I am very glad we have him here. And Honza, I will ask you to comment on your views on the existing PPP project, whether the Czech Republic is ready for next PPP projects, and then you can comment on high-speed line. How does CSOB perceive that particular project? Thank you for having me. I feel it would be nice and useful to mention a few things related to the funding. In 2004, I started to engage in PPP projects with my colleagues from the EU. We started in Benelux countries, and paradoxically, we arrived to the Czech Republic in some 15 years. I'm still very grateful for that, and I'm glad that you are having me at this wonderful conference. Thank you for organizing this wonderful event. I feel the period when the PPP word was a bad word is definitely gone, which is also perfect. I hope this is a kickoff. This is the beginning of a whole new era. Our bank has gained experience, extensive experience, and the team that I have is great. They are able to work independently without building any Chinese walls. We can serve multiple investors. Everybody knows us. Vinci, Strabag, they know us. We know each other on a personal basis. And also, this is not only about people in the front line, project managers. It's also about the background, the back office. You know what to expect. You know people who will approve your project, who are aware of all risks that are related to that. And that's not something that you learn from textbooks. You have to gain your own personal experience. And the same thing must exist on the public side. Well, concessionaires have got that. They've got teams. They prepare bids. To prepare a bid for D4 can cost them about 100 million Czech crowns. So it's a very intense, costly thing. And the same quality must be on the part of the procuring authority. 2 people are not enough. 2 people with a group of advisors do not suffice. The procuring authority must be very, very strong, be it the Ministry of Transport, the Rail Administration Authority. There must be knowledgeable people. We say we don't have experts yet. No problem, let's buy them, let's pay them. Please do not try to find our own Czech ways. No way. High-speed line projects are extremely money intensive. There will be enormous costs. It cannot be done by anyone who's not knowledgeable. Yes, we can do that with university graduates, but we will not succeed. We need managers, people who have real actual experience. Concession PPP projects are standardized transactions. If you look at a project that is in Germany, in Slovakia, in Belgium, if you take a concession contract, you will see the same items, the same clauses. The logic is still the same. And if we want to attract large stakeholders who will build it, who will operate it, who will spend their own money on it, we will have to correspond, or we will have to be aligned with the rest of Europe. They are not willing to learn Czech ways, and the capital cost is enormous. There's perhaps one more important remark. We've gone through that doubtful phase, so to speak, but I'd like to repeat 3 or 4 aspects that are very important for the procuring authority. First, the infrastructure is owned by the procuring authority from the very first brick. The first crown it pays is when they start to operate the infrastructure. Fee for accessibility is paid later. The money or the fees are linked to the performance of the infrastructure. If it does not perform, if it does not have the required quality, the figure can be even negative. And in my opinion, this is really important to look at the prices that are involved in the bids. The entity the bidder needs to think whether they might want to build a slightly more expensive infrastructure to reduce the cost of a life cycle. In France, for demand risk, the period is 50 years, and you have to calculate the rate of return for the whole period. So sometimes it's worth it to increase the cost of construction to increase them slightly to be ready for the end of the process when the title will be transferred back to the public sector. It cannot be achieved if you only do design, build or build. That's where the lowest price of construction will be considered, plus a guarantee period. The attitude is completely different. And there's a unique situation. You have a designer, builder, financier. They compete with each other. You cannot artificially raise your prices because you would not succeed. So all of these aspects must be taken into account as they are unique for the PPP environment. The position of us as a bank is also unique. We enter the process with bidding consortiums. We provide part of the funding, but within the framework of the implementation, we are a sparring partner for the procuring authority. Why? The procuring authority represents a community, the government, a municipality. They want the infrastructure to function, to perform. And our interest is the same. We also want everything to perform, because the assets obviously remain in the hands of the procuring authority. The Czech Infrastructure Association has prepared, in cooperation with Tomas Janeba, a wonderful book, Railway PPP Projects. It describes 10 high-speed rail projects, and it clearly shows the structures of funding of those projects. And they are large projects, so they always had a part of national resources, 50% on the average. That's one aspect. Aspect number 2, equity. If you have a good concession contract, then the equity would be at around 10%. The rest is usually commercial money, commercial resources. TEN-T rail lines, green lines, all these aspects are very important for multilateral financial institutions such as EIB, EBRD. Plus there are debts, loans, bank loans or project bonds. I was going to say that project bonds issued within the framework of financial closure are one thing. They serve to build the very infrastructure. Then there are bonds that are issued as soon as the infrastructure is put in operation, and these are in fact public issues.
The project bonds have back-to-banks structure. By banking loans, are supported by banking loans. This is usually a non-public issue for specific investors, and the reasons are that during the implementation of such large-scale infrastructure, it is necessary to respond to how the construction develops. That saw that D4 copies the S-curves, and I saw that in no other project. This is quite unique. Usually you see some delays, you see some permission, you need to wait for some permissions, sometimes handover procedure is not correct, sometimes. So there are various modifications to the project, and investors need to respond to this. People who provide, or the institutions that provide financing need to respond to that. Any increase in costs or any impacts on hedging need to be renegotiated with the financing institutions. So this is why the basic financing of the infrastructure is done through bank loans, bank debt, or through non-public issues of bonds, where you have a narrow circle of financial institutions who have dedicated teams who are able to evaluate and assess in cooperation with the project partners whether it has impacts or not and what measures need to be taken. Once the standard commercial operation is started, then refinancing can be used. We saw that in one case of one of the high-speed rail projects, green loans, green bonds can be used. So there are various options, and then these are public. This is public issue of bonds, and railway is quite common issuance title. So to conclude, I would like to recap. I'm very glad that we are considering PPP for high-speed rail, and I'm very glad that we are working on further projects according to this model. Please let's stick to these standards. we do not have experience, but there are experienced people. There is experience available in other countries. So please pay for the expert because the money is, well, worth it. So thank you for your attention. Honza, thank you very much for your speech. You have 3 minutes left. The Czech railway manager will need to 80 to 100 billion crowns in the next 10 to 12 years. Where we can get this money on the Czech market? How? What will be the position or the view of the banking sector? Well, I think that this really has to take a European scale. We need to make sure that the investors and the consortia see what they know from other countries. We should avoid making them look for, study the specifics that are particular only for our country. So we should also have national resources available. The national resources can be obtained by means of green bonds issued by the state, but this would be tied to a purpose. It would not be a general purpose bonds, but it would be project-related bonds. And what I see when I look at other European countries, the largest infrastructure, transport infrastructure projects, and these are projects that relate to road development, the biggest reach up to 2 billion euros. But these are projects that are exclusively financed by the private capital. I do not think that it would not be possible to have even bigger projects, but they need the appropriate setting. So I think we will use a mix of national resources, national funding, subsidy funding. When we looked at the projects in the study, they had about 50% of this type of funding. Then I think that EIB would also participate. Usually they do not want to exceed 50%, and the rest will be commercial sources of funding. And whether it will be a combination of project bonds and loans, why not? So we saw that as well, and it works well. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank the representatives of EIB, EBRD, SNCF, and the Czech CSOB. Thank you very much. And we reached the end of this block, and we will have a lunch break now.